Hello and welcome back to Explaining Acro. I'm Ben, and as you may or may not be aware, I was first exposed to Acro while at college in the University of Maryland by the Gymkana Troupe there. This troupe was an outreach program for the School of Public Health. We'd spend a fall training, and in the spring we would be traveling to local schools and doing performances and encouraging people to live healthier lifestyles. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to go back to where it all began for me and teach a workshop that covered some fundamentals of hand-to-hand. Fortunately, we took some footage of this event, and we're happy to share it with you today.
The first thing that we're going to be focusing on is foot to hand. So the really nice thing about foot to hand is it's a very safe place for bases to start to build some stability and confidence in these positions. And it's also very accessible for flyers. You don't need to have a handstand or anything like that. You're already used to standing on your ground. If I can get a volunteer, a flyer identifying or flyer adjacent human to lie on their stomach here, we're going to talk about grip for a second. Perfect. So foot to hand grip, there are a lot of different foot to hand grips. I know that this tends to be at least what I was taught when I was at Gymkana, and what's commonly used at cheer. It's great if you have shoes and things like that, but it doesn't really let you use your whole foot. So what's more commonly used in the sports acro world is what we call like an acro grip, and there's a couple variations of that. So first, it looks something like this. What's going on is there's this triangle from the base of my index knuckle to the heel of my hand to the base of my thumb. I'm pushing this kind of triangle somewhere into the arch of the flyer's foot. I'm not grabbing like this. So like when you're a baby and you learn to grab things, like you kind of pinch. That's not what you want to do to someone's hand or foot. That's very uncomfortable. So you're trying to push that whole hand into there, and we're thinking about this point of contact. The second thing that's going on is it kind of depends on the ratio of hands to feet. So if I'm working with Kevin and he has giant feet, I'm not going to be able to hold both the heel and the ball of the foot because I have these little tiny T-Rex hands. But ideally, the heel of my hand is going to be somewhere by the ball of the flyer's foot, and the flyer is going to actually grip around my wrist using their toes. It's going to give you a lot more stability. So if you're on the ground and you're standing on one foot with your toes up, it's much harder than if you're gripping the ground with your toes. Same principle applies here. And then the only other detail that I like to talk about is the heel is this kind of convex. The heel is convex, right? So if I am on the top of the heel or towards the outside, and then one of us externally rotates, I'm going to slide into this kind of C-grip thing. If I am on the inside of that heel and then I slide, I'm going uphill. There's going to be a lot more resistance to that, particularly if someone's standing on there. So that's going to help the grip kind of lock in place. So now that we talked about grip, we're going to actually talk about L-base foot to hand position. As you're looking to get into hand-to-hand and sports acro in general, you're going to spend a lot of time here. This is eating your vegetables. It's like doing your bench press or your squats and stuff like that. Getting comfortable here is going to build the strength that you need. It's going to build the balance for one-arm skills and things like that. So in general, base is going to be on their back. I like to advocate for having the knees bent. This is going to let you kind of push into the ground, push the knees out and get some extra support for your core. You can imagine it's like you're doing a bench press or a squat, something like that. You want that external rotation and pressure through the legs to make that easier here. My arms, my shoulder blades, basically I'm imagining that I'm holding a stick in front of me and then I'm breaking it. So hold the stick, snap the stick. That's going to give you that kind of lat engagement and really get your back nice and tight. My shoulder blades are, neutral to slightly retracted. I'm not all the way back. If you bring it too far back, you're going to lose some engagement. But I have, I'm not super protracted either. I'm nice in here, nice and braced. I'm being really careful not to shrug. I'm pulling those scapulas down. Once I've done that and I'm on the ground here, my elbows are going to kind of fall wherever they were. I'm a pretty wide human, so there's a decent gap between the elbow and the side of my body. On other people, there might not be a huge gap, and that's completely okay. When I actually have a flyer in my hands, I'm thinking about pushing up and into their hips. So I'm not pushing straight up. I'm pushing their feet and their legs into the hip socket, and that's to make it feel super locked in and stable. Can I get random base flyer pair, and I can talk about spotting real quick? Perfect. Looks like you're flying.
Okay.
All right. Yep. So let's kind of go through what I talked about with the grip. Again, this is just for learning. So you're going to start by getting that left hand grip. There you go. And then put it back on the ground. And then you're going to get that right hand grip and step in.
I don't want to break your hand by stepping on it.
Yeah, if you're just stepping on the ground here, it's super comfortable as a base. Okay. You're going to be fine, yeah. So now you're going to lift the leg together. As a spotter, I'm keeping my hand on kind of belly and back, and I'm really close. If I'm this far away, no chance. Go ahead. One at a time. Yeah. And you should lift it together. Yep. No, and then let's get that elbow to the ground, like all the way forward to like where you're going to be on the ground. Okay. There you go. Bring that wrist over your elbow. Nice. And then step up. Nice. Yep. And I'm standing nice and close here. I'm biasing slightly towards his back so he's not going to reach for me. It's like very natural that that's going to happen. And then, yeah, we're in this nice position. And then to come down, the base is going to make sure they're keeping their ankle, but open the hands. And then flyer's just going to lean forward a little bit and then come right off. As a spotter, I'm staying here until they are under their own control. Hand-to-hand grip is very similar to foot-to-hand grip in that we're trying to present our whole palm to the flyer and establish as much surface area as we can between them. So the first thing that I'm doing when I'm trying to establish my grip, and there's going to be a little bit of individual variation, but I'm taking this knuckle of my middle finger, and there's this kind of point in his hand where like the base of his thumb and the base of the like outside part of the hand connect, and there's a little groove here. If I have this knuckle of my middle finger sliding in there, it gets stuck and it's not going anywhere. So I'm finding where that is and I'm pushing. Again, not going to work with every hand combination, but I find it works with almost all. And there's this big open hand contact. Once we've established that big open hand contact, what I'm doing is I'm going to hug with my ring finger and my pinky and my thumb. So I'm not doing this and pinching. I'm giving this kind of like side hug to establish more connection. So we're here, we've established this like kind of high five, lots of surface contact, and then I'm adding these things. Finally, I'm going to add my index and middle finger, and then I'm thinking about pushing into the wrist. So I'm not pulling down like that. This is sometimes taught or called the snake bite. I'm pushing directly into the wrist. The reason for that is basically in a handstand, hopefully we've established like some lateral stability. So things like this and this aren't happening. And the only way that it's going to happen is it's going to move forward and backwards. In a handstand as a base, one of my responsibilities is to make sure the flyer doesn't go backwards. To stop a flyer from going backwards, I can push into their wrist. If I'm doing this, this isn't stopping them from falling backwards. Similarly, flyers are trying to stop themselves from falling over and forwards. And again, like this just gives you a longer and more efficient lever to use if you're thinking about pushing rather than pulling. Your fingers probably aren't going to be completely straight. You'll probably still have a little bit of knuckle bend, but like in terms of direction, that's what you want to be thinking about. So once we're here, we have this kind of thing. We're establishing this little bit of a hug. Now straighten your arm. And now we're going to push into each other. So here we're trying to get like pretty even contact. But if there's a little bit of a gap, I'd say, hey, like there's a gap kind of here. Can you push more with your index knuckle? And he's going to push with his index knuckle. And then we can kind of play around and find where it feels like we're pushing a lot. So right now it's super thummy. So if we can find a little more, yeah. But now that's a little bit too much there. So then we're here. And this is an important conversation to have. You want to have lots of contact here. You don't want to be just hanging on by the webs of your thumbs. You don't want like air bubbles and gaps. Now I'm going to lean into this person. We're not using our fingers at all, but already there's a ton of contact between our hands. Once we have this basic feeling, we can start to add the fingers to like provide some extra stability and support, but we're trying to maintain that feeling we had when our hands were open. So even here, we like lost a little bit of contact, but like this, like more like 45. Yeah. This feeling of like, okay, we have a ton of surface area and it feels super solid. That's what we want to keep coming back to. And then the fingers shouldn't be taking away from it. They should be additive. And it's just this kind of like slow process of like unlearning 20 something years of like developmental kinesiology. Like literally, if you've watched a baby learn to grab things, like they do this. And it works everywhere else in life, but not in hand to hand. So it's slow, it's kind of unintuitive, but like coming back to that feeling is what we want to do. We're going to start by talking about L-base hand to hand. It is more complicated for flyers than standing hand to hand. However, it's eating your vegetables. When you're trying to like really build stability as a flyer and like master your one arms, not just kind of like be on a base who's running around like crazy under you, you want to be doing that. So like L-base foot to hand is building up that base stability and things like that. L-base hand to hand, like if you want to be a badass flyer, you do a lot of L-base hand to hand. Bases, it's like good too, but like you're not going to get as much volume as you would with L-base foot to hand. Now, there's kind of two things that I want to do here. So the first one, we're just going to be doing a tuck sit on hands. This is just going to be like reinforcing everything that we just did with grip. So quick demo of Matt, you're welcome to fly. Planting my feet, creating stability here. Like if you like do like a little bit of arch in the back here can help put your shoulder in a better position, generate some extra stability. It's kind of optional here. We're not powerlifting, but it does help. Yep, establish that push. So it feels a little thummy to me. So start with your thumbs a little bit more there just so that we can get that push, that 45-degree angle. There we go. And then we're going to add the fingers and then just come into a tuck sit. Again, I'm pushing up and in and making sure that I don't let it go flat. Nice. And then to come down, just bring your feet to the ground. If this is challenging for you, we have a couple variations. So you can first put one leg on my thigh. So step a foot to me. Yep. Take some weight there. And now come into like a tuck sit with that on my leg. Yep. So here, Matt's taking a good amount of weight. Yeah, he did something even easier, which is he has both of his feet on my legs and can take more weight. And then to make it easier and harder, he can eventually start to float. Cool. Come down. Nice.
When you're starting, you want to start close to their head. Don't start like way out here.
Yes. Yeah. Great point. So start. You can even put your feet like in front of my shoulders. Yeah. Yep. And then sit back. Yeah. Yep. And then this is going to be even easier to enter. And from here too, it's much easier to like start. Yeah. Come down for a sec. Yeah. And then as he comes in too, he can also put the foot first on my leg and take some weight. And spotting, very similar to foot to hand. Stay at this part of the flyer. This can come down kind of quick, particularly on the entrance and the exit. So be ready if something's going wrong. Move flyer away from base's head. Flyer to head, bad. Make sense? Cool. Jumping into a handstand. To start with, we want to, just have basically your jump to handstand on the ground. So basically, we're going to have the flyer jump to handstand through a straddle. Base is going to be standing there. Hold the hips. Yep, go ahead. Yep. And then pull into that position. Come on down. As the flyer is jumping, there's kind of two things you want to focus on. First thing, the hips need to get up pretty fast. If they're like pretty back and you're like doing this like slow pressy thing, base is going to do this. No chance. So the hips need to move pretty quickly. And then you also want to think about not like throwing your butt as you're jumping. Drill that can be helpful for this. Be on your knees. My feet are pointed, so I can't really use them. My hands are like by my knees. And I'm pushing up, keeping my shoulders forward. It's forcing me to keep this kind of like hollow chest, rounded position as I come up into my handstand. You can do that a couple times, like jump and things like that. When it comes to actually jumping to the handstand, there's not much more other than you grab, you make sure your shoulders are nice and forward. You jump, move the hips quickly, trying to hit the handstand. So basically, I'm going to have Josh stand kind of straddling me. You want to be pretty close. Yep. Yeah. You can even, well, he's kind of tall, but you can even like have knee to like thigh contact to help kind of lock in there. And he's going to be focused on helping get the hips up super fast. Lean forward a bit more with your shoulders. Yep. And then jump to handstand. There you go. And then exactly the same with foot to hand. I'm thinking about pushing up and into the flyer and then come to the ground. Nice. Eventually you can start to do this unassisted. Takes time. Even if it's like, oh, I'm safe, I know how to come out, I still recommend on working with the spotter just so that you get the feeling for getting those hips up and in line quickly. Now we're going to be talking about like actually loading into like a hand standing. We're going to be covering two different entrances, but first I'm going to talk a little bit about base body position. There are kind of two really important details, and this can be done in follow along fashion. So fashion one is we want to have, you can start with your arms overhead, thinking about keeping your ribs down, not arching your upper back, and like kind of trying to push into the wall behind you. Once your arms are down like this, think about just like pulling the elbow forward and down. The goal here is to keep the scapula, which is this like triangular bone on the back, tilted slightly up. If my scapula is tilted slightly up and like put a bunch of weight on my hand, like just pull down. Yeah, see, nice and steady here. If my scapula is neutral and he puts a bunch of weight, that happens. If I have someone on my hands there, their head is going to the ground. That is really bad. So we want to have that slight upward tilt to the scapula to get that feeling for that. Again, I really like arms overhead, ribs down, and then just pull that elbow forward. Think about like the knuckles dragging on the wall behind you, whatever works, and then just bring it down. And that's the position we want with that scapula. We want to have a lot of tension, like lat, serratus, all of that stuff. This should feel super strong. And if you go around to your friends and like grab on the heel of their hand and pull down, exactly. Like it should feel like you could like don't actually take your feet off the ground, but it should feel like you could take off your feet off the ground and hang there. If you're in that position, you're in a good position. The other details, so like you want to be roughly as narrow as you can be while still being engaged. I can't be very narrow and be very engaged, and I don't have a lot of pronation in my wrist, so I base quite a bit out here. Some of us might be in a similar boat. If you are, there's a couple slight modifications you can do. You can drop the wrists in slightly to make it seem like it's narrower. If you're doing that, push out through the thumb. Other than that, you kind of have to deal with it. The way that I've heard it put, and I like a lot, is that the width and like the hand position for like a low position is dictated by the base's anatomy, and the width for like an extended handstand or an extended position is dictated by the flyer's anatomy, particularly their shoulders. The other important detail when basing a handstand, as you're learning, you're almost all going to be using some kind of split stance. You can also have like feet together, but you're going to have some kind of split stance. You're going to have like some weight over your body. There are two ways to get it directly over your center of mass. Way number one is to lean back. This is bad. You get a bunch of shearing force in your vertebrae, not good. Other thing that happens, if I'm doing this and I lean back, what just happened to the flyer's hands? Yeah, flyer's going that way. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my hips slightly back. So I'm putting some of my mass backwards so that the flyer's mass is there, and then the center of mass is somewhere in the middle. This lets us have a constant angle, and it also means that if a flyer's going backwards, I can adjust like this. If I'm here and I adjust, I'm just dumping the flyer more backwards. Not good. So you want to have this kind of like probably split stance, feet a little bit more than shoulder width, and like a little bit of offset forwards backwards so that you can move. Hips back a little bit, that scapula tilted up. Now that we've talked about this, again, we're going to be thinking about pushing up and in. Now there's two entrances that I'm going to show to this. The first is an assisted load, and the second is just jumping to the shoulders. For that assisted load, I forget what you call this one cathedral, where like the flyer's hand, or if your shoulders were on this. Yeah, we're going to be doing like basically like a shoulder stand that gets pushed into a hand end. Yeah, we're going to essentially be doing that with 3 people. So if I can get a volunteer base and flyer, yep. So you're going to climb to too high on him. So you're going to be basing a hand and I'm going to be spotting basically. Yep, just the shoulders, and you're going to hold on to the hands. So what's going to happen here? So stand up. Flyer is going to lean their shoulders to me. Bring your arms down. Stay straight. Lean. Keep your arms straight. Straight arms. Yep.
Straight arms.
Yep. Josh is going to have reach for more for the scapula. Yeah. Yep. And I'm going to short. So now jump up into your supported position. There we go. Now what's going to happen is you're going to bend and get under the handstand, and Josh, yep, is going to help. Yeah. Again, I'm a little bit short here. What's going on is the person who is holding the shoulders is going to help push the flyer onto the base and help the shoulders open. The base is going to squat and bring the wrists underneath the shoulders. Let's try this one more time. And generally, in a pair, you want the taller of the two to be doing this. Straighten your arms. Yep, there you go. There you go. Nice. Need a little bit more. Come forward. Yeah. That's it. Just kind of keep playing with this. Eventually that balance will be able to kind of come off and go. We should be working in groups of 4 here, right? So there should be the person who's holding the shoulders, base, flyer, and then a spotter. Role of the spotter in this, you want to have a hand on the upper arm of the flyer. Throw your head to the ground. Really try. Yeah. So basically, as long as someone is holding on this is not hitting the ground. Follow the rotation of the flyer, help pull up. There's a lot of people who have hands there, but like if a flyer's arms bend in space like that, it can come down really fast. We want someone to be here to help keep people safe. Final thing we want to do is just jump to hand from shoulders. So we're going to have that same spot on the flyer's shoulder here. Josh, can you do that? So I have a flyer on top of me. I'm going to give a little breath. And the first thing we should do is we should just do a little tempo. Like we haven't done this before. Little breath. Slow down, and then extend through the legs. A little bit of a pop. Flyer jumps, receive. As a flyer, I want to be standing in kind of like a comfortable position. Like being super here, there's really nowhere to go. So try and have your feet like somewhere where you feel athletic. Don't worry about being crazy rounded, but like have your hands in position, and as it goes, then you can enter into your handstand. Yep. There we go. Yep, so yep, move your feet back a little bit on my shoulders.
Bring your foot back. Cool.
Yeah. So the first thing we're going to do is a little bit of a tempo. He's not going to jump. So I'm just going to breathe. Yep. Boom. Nice. And now we are going to jump. Ready? Nice.
Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it if you could support the channel by liking this video, leaving a comment, and subscribing so that you never miss a video in the future. Until next time.